Welcome to a holiday weekend edition of the End Zone. Along with TJ ECKERT, I am Colby Daniels. Hope everyone is enjoying what is one of the best college football weekends of the year, right? We get 3 straight days of college football,
Right.
Obviously rivalry weekend as well, wrapping up the regular season. Everybody's excited about conference races and the college football playoff. I love this time of year. TJ, my friend, how are you?
Everybody's full.
That's
from
right.
Eating to, it's a great time. It is. The season's wrapping up, which is crazy to talk about too, right? That the regular season's coming to a close. All the playoffs are taking shape. Bowl games potentially taking shape. Yeah, it's a fun time of year, and it's always great to have a great slate of games to kind of cap off the regular season like we have.
That's right. Before we dive into this final regular season week of college football, I do have to rewind to last Saturday in Norman, Oklahoma, because that was one of the wildest things I've ever experienced. And I know for a lot of the crowd, there was a lot of cautious optimism, I think, at halftime. And I don't know how many people believed they were going to be able to maintain what they did in the first half going into the second half. But you really started to feel, I think, the crowd get more and more energized throughout the second half, to the point that, you go into the fourth quarter. I think everybody just knew, like, it was a matter of time before Oklahoma finished that thing off. And what a wild atmosphere to be a part of.
It was interesting because everybody says, like, that's one of the best atmospheres I've been a part of. Early in the game, to your point, it was a normal atmosphere in Norman. Like, it was just good, not great. Because I think it was just cautious. It was
very cautious.
When is this going to get off the rails? When is it? And it felt like, when Bauer Sharp drops drops it for the wide open trick play touchdown, they miss a field goal. Like, okay, well, here we go. But they didn't. They held strong, man, and the defense, we're seeing some looks here, just played phenomenal all game long. It was impressive. And then to your point, the second half, the pick six by Kip Lewis, and just the way the defense held that momentum throughout the second half, that was a rowdy environment. And then, of course, we were on the field for the field storm. That was crazy, too.
The premature field storm.
Yes,
and then
that happened.
Yeah.
OU's partly to blame, though. They collapsed their goalposts
That's
early.
right.
So I don't know if anybody's calling them out yet, but we will collapse those goalposts just a smidge too early, and those fans took advantage.
That defensive performance is one of the best I've ever seen,
No
right?
doubt.
I mean, they completely locked down an Alabama offense that over the last 3 weeks has been completely dynamic. Jalen Milroe, while he wasn't a Heisman favorite, he was at least in that next tier of guys that might have had an invite to New York. They completely shut him down, and I can't say enough good things about what the defense did. Again, I think one of the best performances I've ever seen in person, and they're going to have their work cut out for them, obviously, this week against LSU, but that defense has really taken big steps, and it helps when you're not playing from behind for 60 minutes, right?
Well, I know we're going to talk about the offense, too, and it helps that you're not turning the ball over, right? You're not going quick 3-and-outs. I think we talked about it in the postgame. They didn't have a single 3-and-out against Alabama. That's a huge thing for that offense. You're controlling the clock by running the ball. The offensive line, shout out to them. We've been giving them grief all season, and they stepped up and played really well, especially some young guys, too, which was great to see. Jackson Arnold did what he needed to do. He didn't need to be a superhero. Just handle the ball, like, don't lose it, right? Give it to Xavier Robinson, who played great. And then and game management is such a bad connotation. That's all you have to do when you have a defense that's playing as well as they are.
That's right. I mean, you get your number called occasionally, and you take your shots, but it's ball control, take care of the football, don't give them any extra opportunities because your defense is in lockdown mode. And I thought the game plan in terms of the offense was brilliant, right?
Sure.
They limited the amount of times you were going to put the ball in the air to a receiving core that has really done nothing all year long
Top
because
6.
all your stars are out.
Yeah.
And I thought they were very creative in the types of runs that they showed Alabama.
Yeah, the scheme was great. They're getting a lot of love for that. They did a great job, they being Joe John Finley and that offensive staff, using motions and shifts, lots of counter looks, lots of misdirection looks. They got Jackson Arnold involved in the run game, which when you allow the quarterback to run it, you're adding a hat. You hear a lot of offensive coaches say that. You're adding a hat because now the running back can become a blocker for you, which they did, and we saw that a lot. It was impressive, and Joe John deserves a lot of credit. Kevin Johns and that staff deserve a lot of credit for finding ways to be successful. When I mentioned it, your top 5 guys at wide receiver were out going into the game. Then you lose Brendan Thompson in game.
Yeah.
They did a really good job. And LSU's going to have a week to look at the tape that they put up against Bama. So curious to see how they look now that offense has now been put on display. But for 1 week at least, they get a lot of credit for sure.
It's going to be hard to follow up a win over Alabama and just what that atmosphere was like. If there's anything in college football that can give you a similar atmosphere. It's a night game in Death Valley,
Yes.
right? And a season finale. I know OU's only 6-5, LSU's only 7-4. Both teams haven't lived up to what their own expectations are, but they're still two giant brands playing in a primetime game on a big weekend. I think it's going to be awesome, and I'm wildly fascinated by the matchup itself.
It's an interesting matchup because both teams are, as you mentioned, struggling, but OU, by picking up a win like that, feels like they're coming in with momentum, which is
Agreed.
crazy to say given how the year has gone. And think about this, for how much they've struggled all season, there's a legitimate chance that they finish with 8 wins. Like, how weird is that to think about right now? Back in, what was it, after they lost to South Carolina, we were on the show saying, find us another win for OU outside of Maine. Well, they might get 3 now, right? You beat Bama, now there's a chance you can beat LSU, who struggled coming into the game, and then now you go to a bowl game, and maybe you win one there too. 8 wins from where we were talking about this team early in the season is pretty crazy to think about.
Think about what happened against Missouri,
Yeah.
and then the complete flip on the other end of the spectrum to beat Alabama. And now, I mean, if you close it out, the regular season at least, with a win against LSU, I mean, you have salvaged, I think, a lot of the bad juju, if you will, that had existed throughout the entirety of conference play, really.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
It's a wild scenario, and what a wild weekend it's going to be. That's TJ Eckert. I'm Colby Daniels. We'll talk about the college football playoff bracket on the other side. You're watching The End Zone. All right, everyone's favorite topic of conversation in terms of college football, the CFP rankings and ultimately the college football playoff bracket, at least as it's projected right now based on the rankings, right? I love all the hot takes coming from this, and I love the way that people are upset about the process, right? And how the SEC is not getting a fair shake or the Big Ten's not getting a fair shake. Nobody is really being treated right in this thing by the committee if you listen to each individual fan base or just the fan bases that exist within these different conferences. But what was your big takeaway from this week's ranking and the way the bracket would project as of this week going into rivalry weekend?
I feel like we've been talking about this for a while, and it's just now becoming a topic of discussion, I think, nationally, is that if you are the 5 seed, you have the easiest path through the playoff, right? Because you would play probably the worst team who makes the playoff, and then you would play the worst conference champion. So it's an interesting discussion to have there because you're almost penalizing a conference champion, and you're rewarding someone who is not by putting them there. So that's just continues to be an interesting discussion.
I mean, they're the number 2 team in the country, right? In terms of the rankings.
Yeah.
And they're at the 5 spot. The other thing that's interesting is Oregon was 1, Ohio State was 2. You also have Penn State and Notre Dame that are in the top 5 of the committee's rankings, which means 3 of the top 5 teams ranked by the committee don't even get a first-round bye.
Right, and I don't know, you would think that it would benefit you to not get a first-round bye because you get to play at home, assuming you're a higher seed, right? You get to play, you're at home, so in theory it's an easier game for you, and then you have that momentum to carry into your next game, assuming you win. So that's interesting. I saw someone posted what the simulated BCS standings would have been, based on the rankings, and they're very similar to what the committee put out. Because people have been complaining we need to take the human element out of it. Well, the human element has stayed pretty consistent with the computers.
Even throughout the 4-team college football playoff, the BCS and the playoff committee have been virtually identical every year. I mean, there's 1 or 2 occasionally that are mixed up, but for the most part, they've been identical. And the BCS has had the same 4 as the playoff, I believe, every year since 2014. I do think there are a couple interesting scenarios. And look, this is going to change again, so this isn't the final bracket, but I wonder, and I believe that the committee would do what they could to avoid having like conference matchups in the first round. Because if Notre Dame played Indiana, for example, SMU played Penn State, you're just switching a couple teams around. I know they would never admit to that, but do we all collectively want to see that?
No, I don't want to see conference teams play. Big Ten, probably not. SEC is a resounding absolutely not. Like, the committee does not want to see 2 SEC teams play in the first round because then you're eliminating 2 of your cash cows, right, if you will. So I would be shocked to see that. This isn't, since we're over here, it's an interesting matchup, right, in terms of just like the history here. And then if SMU wins, then it's in-state with Tech. Like, I don't know, I know it probably won't happen, but it's fun to at least chat about right now. It gives us content. Someone brought up, and I don't know how you feel about this, doing it like March Madness, revealing it once and just letting experts talk about what they think it's going to be through the season. Do you like the way they reveal it all each week?
I love it.
You do? Okay.
I love it,
All right, well, okay. So that would defeat the purpose of that argument then.
It's more content, and I think because football is only played on the weekend, it kind of gives us something midweek, right?
That's
I
true.
mean, college basketball has these midweek games, so
that's true.
I think it kind of builds to the excitement that is the final release. And look, everybody loves to get fired up about college football,
I was going
right?
to say, yeah, it helps like in late October to have something to complain about with these
That's right.
the bracket, right? It gives us something that we can chat about. So
That's right.
yeah, I guess I don't mind it.
We're going to make picks at the end of the show. One game we're not going to pick, but I do think has significant impact on the bracket is Clemson, South Carolina, a big rivalry game. Clemson is number 12 in the ranking, and if they win that game, I mean, they probably wiggle their way into one of these spots when it's all said and done, but that's a big matchup. And for South Carolina, obviously, depending on the way things fall, a 3-loss team could certainly make their way into this bracket.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a win and you're in type game. I don't know if that's going to play out that way, but implications for both teams. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think we have resigned ourselves to one or maybe none in terms of the Big 12.
Crazy.
250 scenarios that still exist to determine their championship matchup. So
crazy.
What a wild weekend we have going into this final weekend of college football. All right, we are going to move the chains. It's a variation of moving the chains on the other side of this break. That's TJ Eckert. I'm Colby Daniels. This is The End Zone. All right, we have a very special edition of Moving the Chains this week. No guest. So TJ and I are both going to answer the Moving the Chains questions, and we're going to let you decide if one of us gets a first down or if both of us get first downs based on our answers.
Nice,
So you can tweet us. We'll put the graphic up, and you can be the ultimate decider in whether or not we successfully move the chains. All right, first question. This goes back once again to last weekend with Oklahoma's win over Alabama. Where does that win rank in terms of the all-time great Sooner games or Sooner victories for you?
In terms of most unexpected, it ranks really high. I don't know how high, maybe the highest, just because it felt like there was no chance going into the game, right? But in terms of like great moments and stuff, it was kind of boring, if you will. They beat them by 21, so they kind of handled it. I would go back to saying all the Texas wins in recent memory are ahead of those in terms of the Caleb Williams game. You had, the Rattler game where it goes into multiple overtime. All of those, the Kennedy Brooks game, all of them were really good. So I would say it still ranks fairly low, but in terms of unexpected, it's one of the highest, if not the highest, at least for me in recent memory.
I think it's going to be one of those that maybe isn't necessarily remembered as one of the great games in OU history, but I think it will be remembered as maybe one of the more memorable games in Sooner history, especially as we get down the road and people reflect back on just the total domination that existed over a team that was a 2-touchdown favorite on your home field and obviously the field rushing. So I think memorable is where it'll rank highly, but maybe not in terms of the great games of all time. So
could be pivotal too. And for Venables.
Yeah, that's absolutely. Well, I mean, as of now, it's the signature win of his tenure.
Correct.
So, and maybe that changes on Saturday night in Death Valley. As Brent Venables said, it's the toughest thing to do in college football is go win in Death Valley. So here we go. All right, question number 2. As we look at the college football weekend and rivalry weekend, there are so many big-time matchups this weekend. What are your top 3 college football rivalry bucket list games that you would like to attend?
I'd like to go to Army-Navy, so that'd be one for me. I just think that's such a cool game. Man, Ohio State-Michigan would be a fun one.
Okay, where at? Which destination,
Probably the Big House. I don't know. Either one would be good because they're both giant stadiums.
That's right.
Big House feels more historic to me. I'd love to see Bedlam again, so let's put that number 3.
Okay, nice.
Why not? Because we don't have it anymore, right?
Bedlam on the bucket list.
Why not? Put Bedlam back on
there. I like
Bedlam.
it. I'm Army-Navy as well. I'm Michigan-Ohio State as well. I've been to both stadiums. I think the home field atmosphere at Michigan is much better.
Sure.
So I would want to go to that game in Michigan, in Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go Iron Bowl at Auburn.
Okay. Yeah.
I think Jordan Hare, to me, just historically gives better vibes for that specific rivalry than Bryant-Denny.
I agree. I like that.
So there were some others that were really in the mix, but I had a hard time.
Those are 3.
Just getting it to 3.
Fair enough.
All right, back to OU. What are the most favorable or which which bowl projections do you like the most for Oklahoma right now as it stands?
None of them have USC in it, which is what we were all clamoring for. So if someone will do that.
Your move, Las Vegas
yeah,
Bowl.
Right. Anybody, just put it out there. Just put it in the stratosphere, and I will take that one. Vegas would be fun. Music City Bowl's been tossed around, so Nashville would be a decent. I don't want to go to Birmingham. Like, I don't really care to go to Tampa.
Montgomery, I think one of the bowls in Montgomery is also a possibility.
Shreveport's also an option. Don't want to go to Shreveport.
Yeah.
So I would say Music City Bowl and then Vegas would be great. I think Guaranteed Rate as well in Phoenix is another option too. There's a lot of options right now, which is crazy to see too.
Yeah, there. In terms of the matchups, there was one against North Carolina, which I thought would be a lot of fun.
Virginia Tech.
And then they fired Mac Brown,
Yes.
so you don't even
Yes.
have the OU versus Mac Brown angle. But
Right.
I think North Carolina still beats some of the other possibilities.
Yeah, I
saw
think so.
Louisiana
Yeah,
as one
South
of the
Florida
matchups,
was
which
one, too.
would not be
Yeah.
much fun
Yeah,
at
don't
all.
like those.
All right, final question. Brent Venables went to Taco Bell after the Alabama game, spent $94 as
Yes,
the
yes.
victory meal after Alabama, $94. So what items have to be in the bag if you're going to go spend $94 at Taco Bell?
Oh, I need to have multiple people in the car because that's a hefty price tag for me. Chicken chalupas are my
Okay.
go-to. I used to like the Cool Ranch Doritos Locos Taco. I don't think they do that anymore. I think it's just nacho cheese.
That's a good
Maybe
question.
some
I
places
don't know
do
the
Cool
answer.
Ranch. I don't know.
Okay.
But just to go back in the Wayback Machine, give me Cool Ranch.
Okay.
Chicken chalupas would be good. And then I'm really basic. I'm good just getting some soft tacos.
Okay.
Cinnamon twists are good too, though.
I do love some soft tacos. I would go cheesy gordita crunch has to be in the bag.
Okay.
I'm a fan of the Crunch Wrap Supreme.
Yes. Yeah.
Who doesn't love the
He does
Mexican
too.
pizza?
Yeah, Mexican pizza.
The Mexican
really?
pizza is always a solid option.
Okay.
And I think any of the chalupas are good.
They're really good.
So if you're going to spend $94, like I want a little bit of everything,
Yeah.
right? Give me a Crunch Wrap, give me the gordita,
Variety.
and a chalupa.
And I said cinnamon twist, so you got to get a little dessert in there too.
Yeah.
So
By the
there
way,
you go.
Taco Bell did reach out to Oklahoma and
saw
said,
that.
check your DMs because
I
we want
saw
to
that.
hook OU up with
Good
some
for
Taco
Taco
Bell.
Bell.
So good
There
for
you
Taco
go.
Bell and good for the Sooners. All right, final timeout, and it's rivalry week game picks next to wrap up the end zone. Before we embarrass ourselves with last week's record and the overall record, a reminder that you can determine who picked up the first down in moving the change. Simply tweet us at Colby_Daniels, at TJ Eckert, KTUL, and let us know if you think we got a first down or if we were denied
Perhaps.
based on our answers.
Nobody has
So,
yet, so maybe the
Yeah.
crowd will not like us. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, there you go. All right, let's look at last week's standings. Josh Calloway was
How
the
about Josh?
outright winner.
We were on the field with Josh during the OU game, and he was like updating me on how his picks were doing. So he was
He was
invested.
cursing the Cowboys because
was.
OSU was his only loss.
So good for Josh. It's the best showing, tied for the best
Yeah.
showing with Eddie.
Yeah,
Good for him.
overall record is not very appealing for either one of us.
Oh, you're still above 500 though.
Well,
so
I
making money.
got back above 500 this week
Making
with
money.
3-2, but yeah,
I
I
did
was
not.
I was at 500 last week. All right, game number one in a gigantic rivalry weekend of college football. TJ, there are so many big games at the Big House, Michigan, Ohio State. Or excuse me, at the Horseshoe.
I would say they're in Columbus. I'll take the Buckeyes because I don't think Michigan's any good, and I think Ohio State's building momentum as they go into the postseason.
I hate giving 21 points basically in a rivalry
It's a
game,
lot.
especially of this magnitude. If I just look at the two teams, though, I think Ohio State is 3 touchdowns better or
Agreed.
more.
Agreed.
So I'll take Ohio State. Game number 2 this week, Notre Dame at USC on the West Coast.
I'm going to take the Irish just because I don't want to put USC on my resume. So I'm going to take the Irish, and it might help OU in terms of bowl. Maybe they'll get to play the Trojans.
I think the Irish are playing really good
They are.
football,
They're
and
hot.
I think they're built to take advantage of all of USC's weaknesses.
We forgot about Northern Illinois.
So
that game's in the past.
give me Notre Dame as well. All right, game number 3, Auburn at Alabama, the Iron Bowl.
This is interesting because it's a tough game to pick, but being in Tuscaloosa I think helps the Tide. So I'll take Alabama.
Roll Tide for me as well. That Auburn team just leaves a lot to be desired, despite
Yes, agreed.
pulling off the upset
Agreed.
last week. The biggest matchup this weekend is Texas at A&M, renewing a rivalry.
This is similar to Bedlam. Like A&M does not beat Texas very often, but it's the first time they've played in a long time. It's at Kyle Field. I don't know if they win outright, but maybe they keep within a field goal. So I'll take the Aggies.
I'm going to continue the streak and pick against A&M.
Good.
So give me the Longhorns -6 on the road. I know that's going to be a tough environment,
Sure.
so it probably goes against what my natural instinct would be, but I'll take the Horns. All right, Oklahoma at LSU. We talked about it earlier. This is a wildly fascinating matchup.
At LSU at night's tough. I think OU finds a way to at least keep it within the line 6. So I think they find a way. If they don't win, they cover at least.
If they can run the football and play defense, they'll at least be close.
Yeah.
So I'll take the points in that matchup, and it's going to be a fun weekend. So
no doubt.
Everybody, happy holidays, and we'll see you next week.